What's up, everyone? It's Nylan from SurrenderedStrength.com, and you're listening to the Surrendered Strength Radio. Welcome to everyone that has been here before, and to everyone that has not been here, welcome also. I am working on getting my guest the invite, so give me a couple ticks here, and he should be jumping on pretty soon. My guest is Shane from Hero Dad Mission, and I'll just wait to introduce him more. His last name is his name is Shane Akey, and I think that's the pronunciation, but we will confirm that in a little bit. I appreciate, again, everyone listening. Make sure you step over or jump over or click over, whatever, to SurrenderedStrength.com and get connected there so you can get all the updates, blog, everything sent directly to you, and you will be in the loop of what we got going on with Surrendered Strength. And what we got going on is we are strengthening and encouraging men to honor God with everything they do. And that's everything. You know, as men, we have many hats, many roles, and we don't want to be strong in one area, whether that's physically, mentally, or spiritually. You know, say you're a strong businessman, but you're maybe not as present as you could be at home. So there's many areas or roles that a man has to play, and we have to be strong in every area. All right, we are waiting for Shane. He should be jumping on any second now, and we will have a great conversation. I'm excited to have Shane on because he's doing some good things with Hero Dad Mission. He's really bringing awareness to fathers that, you know, there's a way to live and to be a father that, well, hey, I think he's getting on here, but there's ways that we can live as fathers and you know, lead as fathers. That Shane, can you?
How are you, Nylan?
Nylan, but
Nylan?
That's okay, because I may have butchered your last name already.
Well, then we're fair. Go ahead. What do you think it is?
I went with Akey.
That's what everybody goes with. It's Aki.
That's
so yeah. That's, you know, you're in the majority. Everybody says Aki, so no problem.
Perfect. Yeah, I was just giving a quick introduction. You're gonna have to give a better one with the correct pronunciation, but it's great to have a conversation with you and have you join me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. It's always nice just to catch up with other dads, for sure, man.
Right. So you are the founder of Hero Dad Mission, and we connected maybe a couple months ago, roughly, on Instagram, and you have been putting out a lot of great content. For me personally, you brought a lot of awareness to me as a dad and how I want to raise my children and be a better dad. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to get you on here, because, you know, if you're impacting my life, you're going to be impacting others. So why don't you give a introduction about yourself and Hero Dad Mission?
Sure. Well, I appreciate that, Nylan. I think so. For me, a quick introduction is, you know, I'm a father of 4 kids. and it is, I have 4 children that are 4 years old and under. So we have we have twin boys. They're 4 years old. My daughter is 3, and then we just had another daughter in December, and so she's what, like 6 weeks old now. So it's a very stressful, crazy season of life for us right now in this house. But there's lots of moments throughout the day and over the time that my daughter's been born that we're just amazed by what God has blessed us with and the family that we have. And Hero Dad mission, I would say this sort of was not my idea. I would say this is something that God put on my heart. Years ago, my wife and I, there's a whole story, but maybe we'll get into that later. But I wanted to do something similar, and it wasn't the right time of life, and it didn't quite work out. So that sort of fizzled out, and I just sort of put it on the shelf, put it aside, didn't really think much of it. And during my times in prayer, a question that my wife and I had been asking ourselves for a long time was, why us? Like, why are we in this situation in a good way? Because there's a lot of things that have happened to us that could have just been 1 degree different, and we could be in a much different situation than we're in right now. So we're asking that question, and with that in mind, when I was praying, God basically spoke to me and said, because I want you to share your story. So I've always sort of had passion for being a dad, something that I enjoy, and always wanted kids from a young age. Like, I would say like middle school, thinking about having a family and getting married, all that sort of stuff. So something that he just kind of put in front of me, and I just running with it. So started a website, posting things, just real life. I'm only a father for a couple of years, but there's a lot of wisdom within that, and I have a unique story to tell beyond just being a dad. So getting into some of that as well, but just basically following where I think God's leading me to go. And it's been a fun journey so far. Not on it for a lot, but it's been an interesting path, and met a lot of cool people already. And I think this fatherhood, being a dad, like we talk about, one of the things that so many fathers miss is kind of going down that lone wolf path and trying to do everything themselves. And that's where I want to join in with a lot of these other great missions out there and great fathers, and try and be able to help dads get over the hump with some of this stuff, and make better memories with their kids.
Right.
So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Awesome. And you mentioned having an idea in the past, and God bringing you to this point. And I think there's lots of different roles that as men we play, but there's not many that are greater than being a dad. And I think a lot of men, and I'm sure, or I know I've done this in the past, that we think we have to have some big mission, big legacy. But what greater legacy than our children?
Amen. Yeah. And I think even more than that, part of what I really am focusing on is the concept of an ordinary father. A lot of dads, I think, want to spend time with their kids. They want to be there for them, but sometimes it could be like checking off a box. And I think other things become more important. Work becomes more important, being a part of that grind. Other things that just sort of come before that. And I think it doesn't take a whole lot to be a good father. I mean, we all make mistakes. We all screw up. There's no perfect. I don't think there's a thing out there as a perfect father. Nobody can look at somebody and be like, oh, that guy's perfect. Like, he never messes up. If anybody tells you that, they're lying. So with that in mind, I think it's just some simple things that with your kids, really the number one thing is just to be present. It doesn't have to be any more than that. And that's what I found out that just the other day, and I had a post on this that I put on my social media channels. But just the other day, my kids were playing in the kitchen and messing around, and I came home and it was a long day, and it was like, oh, now I gotta help my wife with the baby, and dinner has to be made, and there's all these things that go on, and there's other things on the to-do list that you want to get done, and it's like, okay, well, I want to spend time with my kids, but being a dad, a lot of us are like, well, let's do something really fun. Like, I got to find something fun, new, exciting for them to do. And I think we look at it that way a lot more than they do. They just want us to be there. They just want time. So thanks to Amazon, we had this big box that was in the living room, and they just hopped in this box and wanted me to push them around in the box. So that gave us our hour of playtime or whatever it ended up being. And that was it. And they were fine. They crammed in there with each other, and we were all together and laughing. And so I think we overthink it sometimes, that we gotta spend a lot of money or we gotta go do some crazy adventure. And those things are fine. I mean, it's fine to do that stuff, but some days, you just wanna do something really simple, really easy, and just be with your kids. Just sit there on the floor with them, draw a picture with them, bring them in on stuff that you do. I mean, there's times where I'll cook a meal and it's like, okay, well, I'd like to be with my kids. Well, hey, do you guys want to come over and help cook the hot dogs, or help cook the meat, stuff like that. And just time with us, time with their dads, I think is the most important thing, and where we make the most memories, that last. So that's what I've found to be really important with them.
Right. And I appreciate you bringing up that you work a full-time job. I work a full-time job, outside of Hero Dad Mission and Surrendered Strength. So, it's not like you're just staying at home and have all day to play with your kids and do the things that you would love to do with them. And there's a lot of other dads out there that are in the same situation. And you're right, it is a struggle, but just being present and giving them a little bit of quality time is important. So I appreciate that. Now there's a quote on your website that I really like, and I want you to just tell us a little bit more about why it's important to fathers and or why it's important to fathers to understand, and that is, heroes aren't born, they're made. So just talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think, like I said, to me, I talked about it a little bit earlier. There's a lot of things that we do, our job, you talked about, we both have careers, and lots of other guys, everybody has a career, things they're skilled in, and you have to have training for that. You have to go through hours of training. Some jobs are more than others, and there's varying degrees of that. But anything you want to be really good at, you have to put in the time, the effort. You're not just going to be good. You're not just going to have those skills. I mean, maybe sometimes you will, but in most situations, it's something you have to work at. So when I came into, I would say, my marriage and even, being a dad, I think expectations were a little bit like, oh, I'll be able to get through this. Like, I've learned some things and I've read all the books, and that doesn't, you can read all the books you want. You can go through, listen to every story. There's nothing like having your own family, your own kids, and experiencing it yourself. My wife and I talked a lot about different things. Oh, when we're parents, we're going to do things this way, and we're going to do it like that, and our kids won't be like this. And of course, we had our own, and we're like, man, now we feel pretty humbled, like having seen what that was like. But I think it's really about just like reading some books and really applying yourself and trying to hone those skills. And we were talking about, being present. Like, that was something that sort of understood, but the more time and research that I put into that, and things that I listened to, and people that, are mentors of mine, and I hear more about things like that. And I think it's just applying yourself and being able to understand that this isn't something that, talking about being a father, it's not something that we're just good at. It's not just going to come to you. So when you're sitting there, something you're like, man, like asking yourself that question, why can't I be good at this? Why aren't I? Well, how much time are you putting into trying to build those skills, trying to, learn how to play with your kids? What, maybe there's things out there, what games can I play with them? What activities can I do? Or trying to do, some different things. So that's basically, what I meant by that was, this isn't just going to be something you're good at. You're going to have to work at it. And anything in life that, is worth doing, has involved some work. So the word hero to me too, I think, as you talk about that, is important, because I think when I first thought of a hero, in my eyes, a hero is somebody who, you think of them as strong. They're always going to win. They're always uh, defeating the bad guy. You see that, like, it almost has an image that it puts in your head of somebody that is unbeatable. They're invincible. But I think on the flip side of that, almost any hero story that you see, there's always some issue. There's always something that they have to overcome. There's some weakness that they have to figure out how to, build strength up enough to be able to overcome that. So that to me is where that also came in, because if you're going to be a hero for your kids, that includes those weaknesses that you have, and realizing how to just sort of let that go. And that's going to come and go, and even explaining to your kids that, like, yeah, this daddy is going to make mistakes. There's things that I'm going to do that you're not going to like, and you're not going to be okay with all the time, but I'm human just like you. We make mistakes. Dad just makes mistakes just like you guys do. So I think that's all part of that quote, and the idea of putting in the training, putting in the effort, putting in the work, and the idea of a hero, having those weaknesses, and you work to overcome those things.
Right. And when I was, just thinking about that quote, the one thing that came to my mind was another quote, and we don't rise to the occasion, we fall to our level of training. And for most dads, our level of training is simply watching our dad. Whatever our dad did, that's our training. Unless you put in time to research and learn how to be a better dad. And um, you know for the men, I had a pretty good dad, but there's room for improvement in my mind, and for myself. And I see things that I'm like, okay, this is how my dad did it, but I want to do it a little differently and try and do it a little better. And without that training, and without other men to help us along the way, we're just gonna fall to the level that we know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of what you were talking about there with your father, and not knowing a whole lot about that relationship, but it sounds like we have similar pasts, where I was the same way. Like my dad, I have a great dad, and he did so much for us growing up. He worked very hard, and he was there coaching our sports teams, and he never missed anything that I was at, any sporting event or anything like that. That was something that was very important to him to be around. But I think our generation, our fathers, at least in my experience, a lot of them didn't know how to do the stuff that we're talking about when it comes to being present and playing with your kids, and playing catch and doing some of those things. And that was something that I saw that I wanted to be different with my kids, and I wanted to be able to really um, engage with them in different activities. And that playtime is just really important to me, and we've made a lot of good memories doing that. But yeah, I mean, I think, and at the time when we look at our pasts, we can say this. I think our kids are going to say the same thing that we're saying about our dads, that we can go through this and we can do all this training and we can, do everything that we want to do and really invest the time into being as good of a dad as we can for them. And I still think when they get to be our age, they're going to be doing this. They're going to say the same things. There's things that I want to bring with me that my father taught me, and there's things that I want to improve on, and that's okay. I mean, that's going to happen. Like I said, we all have weaknesses, and we all have our shortcomings. But yeah, it's I think that's interesting when you look at your past and what you bring from that and what you want to learn, and there's a lot to dig into when it comes to that stuff.
But I for one, honestly, really hope my kids say the same thing and they're like, my dad was good, but I want to be better. And I'm sure you want the same for your kids.
Oh yeah, I actually went. There's a mastermind that I'm a part of that we did an exercise where we wrote our own eulogies, and it was a heart wrenching, very emotional exercise, but something that I'm really glad that I went through, because what it really taught me was some words that I would want to be associated with myself after after I'm gone, that my kids would remember me by, and just things that, like, when my kids think about me, how do I want them to think about me? And one of the things was, I want my kids to realize that I made mistakes and I was imperfect. I don't want them to look at me as this, dad that's up on this pedestal and that they see me that way. I want them to see me and be like, dad, he made a lot of mistakes. Like, whenever he went to the grocery store, man, he would always forget that one thing, or like he did things with us, but he would always not do this quite right, or different things. But man, there's nobody on earth that loved me like that man did. Nothing even came close. So that's what was in my head, was, despite all the shortcomings, and there's a lot. I have a lot of shortcomings, but I do feel that the love that I have for my kids, man, I don't know, other than their mom, I don't know that there's anybody out there that could love their kid. I love my kids, and I'm sure every dad feels that way, but that's just the feeling that I have. And it was a really interesting exercise to go through.
Yes, you wrote about that in your last or latest blog, and
Mhm.
I got that and read it, and I've done that exercise, or I did it in the past,
Mhm.
but that was before I had kids, and
Mm.
I haven't rewrote it, but as I was thinking about that, I'm like, that's brilliant, because it's well, maybe not completely different, but different now that I have kids, and I would definitely change things, and I see where I would want to improve, and hopefully my kids would be able to say such and such about me. And so yeah, that was an impactful email the other day. It really made me think. So that was great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Um, yeah, I would definitely recommend. Now I've never done it without kids, so we're a little the opposite there. But I would definitely recommend trying to go ahead and move forward with it again now that you have your kids, and see. It would be a really interesting comparison to see what changed, and where things might have stayed the same. Yeah, I think that would be interesting for you. It's For me, it was really something that I went into. uh, I was sort of mentally overloaded when we were doing it. And I was like, man, how am I even going to do this? And was able to push through that. And I'm glad that I did, because there was just a lot of stuff that it brought up. And it was weird to be able to sort of, for me, write something that I was describing it as your best case scenario of a in life. So it's almost like living your perfect life, which sounds weird, but it that's sort of what it was. And it for me, it provides that, you hear the quote where it's, if you aim at nothing, you're going to hit it every time. it sort of gives you that goal in your life to shoot for. We talk about things like core values and things like that. And this gives you a picture, a vision of something that a legacy that you want to leave behind for your kids. And without that, where, and for your wife, for your family, where are you going to go? I mean, you don't know. I mean, how many people think about that kind of stuff, and you just get to the end of your life and it's like, well, man, did I do what I wanted to do? And the other thing that it does as you go through, at least for me, it highlighted things, because there's things that I want my kids and my wife to say about me and to feel about me that honestly I'm not living up to right now, that I need to put work in those areas. And I called them gaps. So I think it showed me the gaps in my life and where I need to really be investing time to be able to live up to that vision I have for the legacy I want to leave for my kids.
Right. That's great, and I would encourage everyone to do that as well. Transitioning a little bit, on your website, I think you tweaked it a little bit since the first time I looked at it to now. I think you had 3 pillars, and then I don't know if you took the pillars out or what, but I'm going to go through each one, and then we're going to talk about each one individually. So the three pillars: say yes to yourself, prioritize your marriage, and be present with your kids, which we kind of talked about, but we'll talk about more. So the first one, saying yes to yourself. The first, I think it's the first line, but you say you can't pour from an empty cup, and that is something that over the past couple of years I've really kind of taken to heart and looked at myself in terms of, how do I want to help others and still, do the things in life that I want to do, and how I want to live. And God has really put that on my heart to he kind of brought up the verse in Matthew. There's more verses than just in Matthew, but love yourself, or love your neighbors as yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, if you're going to love your neighbors as yourself, you have to start with yourself. And it's the same idea as you can't pour out of an empty cup. So just talk about that a little bit more.
Well, this is something that I had to learn. This is something that you hear the phrase all the time, happy wife, happy life. And it sounds all fine and good,
Right.
but that really is a recipe for disaster, because it forces you to we're talking about saying yes to yourself. It forces you to say no to yourself.
Right.
There's things that, and I'm not talking about, when we're talking about stuff like this, we're not talking about constantly, being on trips and being away from your family and doing things like that. There's little things that every man needs that are going to be able to just re-energize him. Everybody has a different term for it, filling your cup, sharpen the saw, what have you. But whatever you need to get re-energized and to be able to really be your best self for your family, for your kids, for your wife, that's what you need to do. So, and it's a bit of a process. I mean, I've changed throughout the years, different things that become more important, but you figure that out. And whether it's a morning routine or an evening routine, or you really want to pour into the exercise and being able to put more into that bucket. Journaling is a common thing. I do a lot of journaling. Getting those thoughts and ideas out of your head is something I think that's really important. You and I are both men of faith, so obviously reading scripture, prayer, meditation, all those things, where if you are constantly looking to please other people, that can be a good thing to a point, but not when you sacrifice all this stuff. Because when you do that, then in those situations, like especially for me, when I come home and the kids are screaming and they want dinner, and the baby's fussy and doesn't want to go to sleep and my wife is at her wit's end, when I haven't been able to put a little bit of time into my own self-care, those are the times when things really break down. And I don't have the patience to handle that. Instead of going to my wife and being like, hey, I'll make dinner, like you go sit down, I'll just complain and whine and, just not be the best husband, the best father that I can be. So it's the other part of that I've heard that could turn some people off, but I feel like is true, is it's not selfish, it's you're being selfless. So or hold on, I said it wrong. You're being selfish so you can be selfless. It's putting time into you that then you can put time into other people. So putting a little bit of effort and investment into yourself is okay, and more than okay, it's needed. So yeah, that's like I said, it's different for everybody, but I feel like it's essential for you to be able to have relationships with your family, your friends. You have to have that time that you pour into yourself.
Absolutely. And I can fully admit that first, I would say probably about 2 years of my marriage. We're going on 5 here in March, but the first 2 years, my wife and I, we, for whatever reason, lack of knowledge, we did not take care of ourselves and do things, for ourselves. I mean, it's not like we didn't work out, didn't eat healthy, that stuff, but the kind of like you said, the journaling, the scripture, like I said, we worked out, but it wasn't per se training in a way, at least in my mind, it wasn't training to make ourselves better. It was just go do something. So yeah, the first 2 years of my marriage, it was almost like I forgot about myself, and that went, kind of took us down a path that we didn't want to be on. In the last 2-3 years now, we've been focusing on making sure we get that time for ourselves. And anytime that my wife needs some time to just go away because she's working and in school, I'm like, I got you. You just go take some time for yourself because I know that's important. And the first couple years, I may not have done that as much. So that's definitely something to learn, and just to take care of yourself so you can take care of others.
Absolutely.
Now the second one, prioritize your marriage, and I really like the first part there. Put in the work to have a great marriage. So often I feel like people think of marriage as, once you're married, everything's bliss, and it is not that it's bad. It's just there's work, just like you said earlier. Anything that's worthwhile, you have to put in the work.
Oh yeah, I think it's a lot the same concept that we talked about earlier. You have to be able to invest into it in order to see the reward come from it. And you're not, again, just like you're not gonna just be a good father, you're not gonna just be a good husband. You have to be able to invest time into your wife, invest time into your marriage, and then you'll see the benefit and the reward from that. I think this is an area that can be really scary a little bit, or almost it sort of sneaks up on you, where at least it did for me, where especially with kids, once you have kids, you can sort of use them as an excuse and be like, well, we really don't have time
Right.
because we got to do this for the kids, and we got to and depending on your level of support, if you have a lot of support, friends, family, neighbors that can help with watching the kids and so on and so forth with that, that helps too. But I think there's a lot in wrapped into that you can really use to put off your marriage and not invest that time into there. And it comes at varying. There's seasons of life. I mean, I think we have seasons in our marriage, seasons as a dad, that you go through, and sometimes we can put a lot more time into our marriage, and a lot more time into, I can invest a lot more time into going out on dates with my wife and doing things. Right now is not one of those times. It's pretty difficult with a newborn to be able to get out and do some of those things, but we will, at the end of every night, or almost every night, we'll sit there before my newborn will wake up, and we'll try and just catch up with each other a little bit. Like, hey, how was your day? What was the best part of your day? What was, what was something that I did today that you appreciated? And I'll say to her, hey, this is something that you did that I appreciated, and we'll share some gratitude with each other. And I'll just ask her, this is something that was shared with me from somebody else, but we've been incorporating it. I'll ask her, hey, where did you really nail it today as a mom? And what was something maybe that you fell short on that you want to get better at tomorrow? And then she'll do the same for me. And so we both get, it might be 10 or 15 minutes where we can trade a little bit of conversation and have some dialogue there. And we're exhausted. It would be so easy to just turn on the TV and go on autopilot, but that's where you do that long enough, and you just really start to feel that separation, that connection. You start to lose that a little bit. So you got to be careful, even with kids, of using that as an excuse that you don't have time to invest into the relationship. Something that we used to do that is a little bit more difficult now was something called Generative Questions. I don't know how familiar you are with that. Okay, so that's basically like a lot of the questions that we usually ask each other are, I'll walk in the door, or you walk in the door coming home from work, and you go, oh, how was your day? And the response you get, good, fine, what very short. It doesn't really give the person that you're asking the question to a whole lot of room to think, create. It's not a good question. So I started asking my wife questions like, hey, what was the best part of your day? Or, what made you smile today? And different things like that. And then we would come up with ones that maybe were even a little bit more detailed. I asked her one time where I said, who are the 3 people that most inspired you in life, most, it meant something to you, and why was that? And I thought she would be like, oh, I sort of knew who she would say, and I thought it'd be like 5 minutes and we'd be done. And we talked for like an hour about these people and what they meant to her life. And she was like, oh yeah, I've sort of about that story. And she would share that. And so it was just really interesting to see how that one little change, and we felt a lot more connected just by incorporating that, changing the way that we ask questions and we talk to each other. And I would, for anybody who's going to try that, I would caution you, because if you haven't done it and you all of a sudden are like, so, who are the 3 most important people in your life? Your wife might look at you and be like, who are you? Like, what are you trying to do? But the more that you stick with it and continue to do that, I think the more that she'll realize, oh, this is an actual change. Like, he's not just doing this to get something. There's no expectation. So that also is really important when it comes to that stuff. You have to actually be consistent with what you're doing and make sure that your actions follow up on your words. That's something that I struggled with over. It was like, hey, I want to do this generative question thing. And my wife would kind of look at me like, oh, okay, like, well, we'll see if that actually happens. So being able to match your actions then with the words that you say, I think is really important.
Absolutely. I can definitely relate to that. I know I've done that, where I'm like, oh, I want to do this, and then for whatever reason I didn't follow through, and yes, the follow through has to be there, or it's just not gonna end well. So absolutely. Another thing I think, or another reason why I really like that you prioritize your marriage second, is that gives our kids a foundation for what relationships are supposed to look like. And that is going to be extremely important for them in every aspect of their life.
Oh, I think it's huge. It's something that when I think about our kids, and someday, I have two sons and I have two daughters. So for my sons, I want them to understand that someday when they hopefully have kids, that their wife comes first. You love your kids are important, but your wife is your first priority. She's the queen, you're the king, and then they come after that. So I want to be able to show them that, yes, I love you and you guys are important to me and you mean the world to me, but your mom is my first priority. And even if they don't understand it right now and they don't express that, I think they feel it. I think it's important for them to see that, mom and dad are okay, that they like each other, they hang out, and they see eventually, when we get back to that, for us anyway, getting out and going dates and doing things like that, investing in our marriage. And when we do that, we do tell them, we're like, why are you guys, they'll say to us, why are you guys going out? What are you doing? And we're like, mommy and daddy have to invest in our marriage. We need to spend some time with each other. And, because if we can invest in our marriage and we're happy, we can be able to really invest more in you guys and spend time with you and pour more time into you. So, I talked about with my sons, and then I think on the flip side with daughters, they also need to see it, because eventually I think they want to have a husband that is going to treat them that way, that I would treat my wife, or we would treat our wives, where they're more important than the children. So I think on both sides, it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I think it's really important. And we don't want our kids to think that they're the center of their own universe either, because that's obviously going to have issues down the road. And that's something that is becoming very difficult for us right now, is trying to teach patience, because of all the children that are there, and everybody has different needs, and mom needs things and baby needs things. And so that is a really important lesson. And I think that just ties in with this, that, you guys have to understand that there's sort of a hierarchy here. Mom comes first, and then, you guys are after her. So yeah, that's a really good point that you bring up.
Absolutely. Now the third pillar, we kind of talked about it already, but be present with your kids. And you say quality time over quantity time. And me, I think I've been struggling with this over the past month or so. I've been trying to have more time, but as you said earlier, it's not necessarily more time, it's just being present and having that quality time, instead of trying to do big crazy adventures and a lot of time, just be there and really enjoy them while we're there.
Yeah, and I found that that's where I have the most satisfaction. It was probably COVID, I guess. I just stayed home. I didn't test or anything, but I was sick, and I'm pretty sure it was probably COVID.
Yeah.
But I was on the couch, basically out of commission, and I felt horrible. Not just physically. I mean, physically I didn't feel great, but mentally, and just about my life at that point, when it came to my family and my kids. Like, I just felt terrible because I couldn't do nothing with them. And I realized even more so, like at this point, I had already gone through and determined what my core values were, although they've changed some even since I've done them. But family is very high up on the list. And I realized that that's why I felt that way, that I wasn't able to invest this time into my kids and spend any time with my wife. And it affected me, because it's one of the things that is most important in my life, is really spending that time with them. And when it comes to my kids, like you said, quality time over quantity time. I could be with them all day and just sort of be there, like be on the couch, and they could be playing their Legos, or watching a movie and I'm sitting there with them, or But when I'm out with them, there's a memory I have where over the summertime we have a trampoline outside and we're playing on the trampoline, and they love to bounce on there and play all sort of crazy games, like anything but just bounce on a trampoline like most, people do. They like to do those other things. And we were playing a game where we were running around and doing silly things. And I just remember it almost like time was in slow motion because they were laughing, like hearty belly laughter and smiling, and we're running around, and it was just really special. And it wasn't something that I planned. It was something that, I thought about or put a whole lot of effort into. It was like, hey, let's go outside and like let's play on the trampoline. And we did that, and we had a blast. We had lots of fun. And there's lots of memories like that that I have with my kids that I realize when I just let go and sort of let playtime happen, that's when the best memories and the best moments sort of just come alive. When I'm trying to recreate or invent things, or sometimes it goes okay, but more often than not, it's just, hey guys, I'm here. I want to play with you. What do you want to do? And let it just go from there and just have fun with it.
Right. It's always fun to kind of give them the lead and you see where their mind goes when you're playing with them. Because I mean, I know they're far more creative when it comes to playtime than I am at this stage in my life. I mean, I can be a little creative, but they're always leaps and bounds ahead of me with that. So it's definitely important to let them, just lead and just go with it.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think it's been interesting too because it sort of lets for me anyway, it lets the little kid in me so loose, and I can be silly and goofy and get on their microphone and have silly voices and do silly impersonations and be an animal and be a monster and do those things that I think are healthy for us. I sit on a computer a lot. I think a lot of times our imagination sort of dies as we get older. So it's really cool, like you said, to see with kids what they come up with and different activities and where their imagination goes. And it's fun to be a part of that, just to get out of our own, repeat where it's work, home, dinner, chores. It can get really mundane, and sort of getting into playtime and engaging with them and just doing some different things that take you out of your comfortable box and get you maybe being a little bit different and doing some things that maybe you wouldn't normally do. But your kids don't care. They're not going to look at you and be like, oh daddy, that was a really bad Elmo voice that you did. You could really work on that. They don't care. They just want you to be there and play and goof with them. And so I enjoy that. Honestly, it's something that I've thought about a lot, like as my kids grow and get older, and we're going to transition into different sorts of play where they don't want to wrestle around as much on the floor, and they want to do different things. And it'll be challenging for me because I enjoy that time with them, being able to just be down on the floor playing Legos, racing cars, whatever it is. My daughter, she does my makeup, different things like that. It's just I have fun with it. It's and I think that's what it's really all about. Just being there, letting go, and for whatever it is, 20 minutes, half an hour, 15 minutes, just be, like we said, quality over quantity. Just be there with them, engage. You'd be surprised when later on they'll talk about, bring something up and be like, oh daddy, that thing we did, that was really fun. You'd be like, man, those 5 minutes that I spent with you on that. So yeah.
That's one thing I've seen in my 4-year-old. He will, I don't know if he has a really good memory or it's just something, but he always brings something up like, oh, remember this time and this happened? And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. That happened, but it's a memory for him. And yeah, it's fun to see. And I agree. It's kind of fun to just be a kid again and to just enjoy the things that we used to do.
Well, and we try and enforce some of that with them. We'll sit at dinner time, is sometimes can be a little bit challenging and sporadic with how we do it, but we try to sit down all together as a family, and we play this game that, again, somebody else had explained to me, and we were doing something similar before, but we started doing this where it's called high-low buffalo, and you go around the table and let each kid share a high or something that they really enjoyed from the day, and then a low where, hey, maybe this was such a good thing, and maybe it's somebody in the family, maybe brother didn't treat me so well, and we can have a conversation around that. Or a lot of times my kids don't really say much when it comes to lows, and even highs, they will sort of copy off of each other, but there's always something very interesting just to learn from that. And then buffalo is just, they always tell jokes that don't make any sense, but the idea of it is share whatever you want. It could be something you learned today, it could be a song that you like, it could be a movie, whatever. I mean, my kids are only 4 and under, so some of this is a little bit difficult, but we want to try and get them started early on it, so that when they get to the age that this is going to be something that I think they understand more, can really engage a little bit, that they're already sort of used to doing it, and we've trained them in that. So that's why we're doing it now. And I think it's important to sit there at dinner or wherever, whatever you're doing, mealtime, and be able to have those conversations and talk about the day with your kids. And it's important for them to learn that.
Right. I remember when I was in high school, I read a book, I think it was by Lou Holtz, and he talked about how he would ask his kids when they had dinner at night, what'd you do today, or how'd your day go? And he said at first it was just, oh, it was good. That's just a very, very minimal response, but he was persistent, and every day, and then finally the kids would open up. So I would say, for men that have older kids, and you want to start doing what you're doing, whether it's high-low buffalo, or just asking them what was a positive or a negative, or for the day. If you haven't done it, it is going to take some time to get them to open up, but it's great that you're starting them at a young age.
Yeah, and I think with older kids too, the questions sort of change. I mean, high-low buffalo works for a while, and then start to ask some different questions, like, hey, what was the best part about your day? And then what are you most looking forward to tomorrow? And what was something that really challenged you today? Where you can, instead of just asking that question again, like we talked about before, like, oh, how was your day? It just doesn't leave a whole lot of room, like we were talking about before, for creativity or imagine. It just becomes, it's way too generic. And I think it's very easy to answer that question with just like, oh, it was fine. And you don't really get anything out of that. And maybe for a while your kids won't say anything. Again, it's something that you have to invest time in and be consistent, and hopefully you'll be able to reap some of the benefit from that.
Absolutely. Well, Shane, I know you have kids napping and your time is limited, so we'll start to wrap it up. I want to say, first and foremost, thank you for coming on and having this conversation. It's been fantastic, and I was excited, and I'm really glad we had the conversation. One of the things that I think you're doing really well, and I appreciate, is just you're creating awareness for dads, that there's ways to learn, and there's ways to grow, and to just be a better dad. And it's an important role that God has given us. So I appreciate all that you're doing. And why don't you just give the final word and let people know where they can contact you, and I'll put links in the show notes so they can get in touch with you as well.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to come on and talk with you. And all these subjects that we've talked about are, I think, very important to both of us. And it was just a really good conversation. And running into you through Instagram, it's been great following you as well, and all of your posts and your family, and seeing things that are going on in your life. And I think, in general, just seeing that with other dads, that there's a lot of encouragement, a lot of things that we can learn from each other. So I'm just happy to be a part of that. And in whatever way that I can, if it's one person that sees, a post or something that I have and can learn something from that, hey, that's a win in my book. So Yeah, if you want to learn more about my life, the mission, and read some of the blogs that I've written on things like how to write your own eulogy and talking about the Hero Dad mission and some of the things we've talked about on here, generative questions, things like that. My website is herodadmission.com. And then I also have Facebook, Instagram, and there is a email list as well. So if you want to have the blog just sent to your inbox, you can sign up for that, and then it'll get sent to your inbox every week as well. Would love to have more conversation with people out there and more dialogue about this stuff.
Perfect. And I will say I'm subscribed to the email, and it's not a bunch of emails, but when you get them, they're quality. So I would encourage every man to get signed up to just become a better dad.
Appreciate that. Yeah, there's it's just blog post. We send that out so you can have that right in your inbox. And there's some other things that are a little bit. I have my time is constrained at the moment, but there's other things that I've thought about. But right now we're just sending out blogs. So the convenience of that, having it in your inbox, I think is really helpful.
Absolutely. Well, Shane, thank you again. Hope you have a good day, and we will definitely be talking again.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate being here and the opportunity. And yeah, we'll be in touch.
All right. We'll see you later.
See ya.
All right, man. That was Shane from Hero Dad Mission, and what a great conversation that was. Men as men of God, we've been given a lot of different roles, different hats to wear, as husbands, as fathers, as sons, but there's not one that I think holds a greater value than being a father. If we look at Abraham's life, he had one son, but from that one son, nations came from him. So just think about what could come from your kids and your relationship with your kids. So I encourage you all to check out Hero Dad Mission and continue to learn how to grow physically, mentally not spiritually stronger as a man, and we will continue to honor God as we do it. So thank you, men. Until next time, have a great day.